something. You gotta check this out.
Plays board games anymore.
Where's my hair?
Where's the rest of me?
Oh my god, we're in different people's bodies!
Stephanie, don't look at it!
No! I'm an overweight middle-aged man. Wait a second. Where's my phone? Don't cry. Yo, what's this?
Jumanji. Pick a character and you're that person in the game.
Bethany, you in?
I don't spend my life staring at a TV screen. Fine.
Oh my god!
Weakness. None?
I hate this game. Everybody else got good stuff.
Weakness? Cake.
Yes, cake is my weakness.
You're a good weapons valet.
What is that?
I think it means you carry my weapons and give them to me when I tell you to.
Don't let this new body get your butt whooped.
Ow! What the hell? We have to work together. I think it's a staring contest. Who's good at staring? Don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. I think we become the avatars we chose.
Welcome to Jumanji.
This is a video game, which means we each have 3 lives.
Come on, let's go. I'm Alex. Watch your step in here.
So gnarly. We can help each other. We all have special skills. Get on my back!
Nope, I'm gonna die.
Let me go!
What is this?
Pound cake. Cake? Isn't that your weakness?
Something happened to me? Am I shaking? Am I still black?
Yes.
Okay, we're fine. Everything is fine. It's all good.
You're not blinking. I'm amazing at it. I can't even with this place. We gotta go, get on my back!
Hell no!
I'll carry you, come on!
I would rather die.
Back in 1996, a man out jogging along the beach stumbles across something strange buried in the sand. An old-fashioned board game that looks like it hasn't been touched in years. He takes it home and hands it to his teenage son, Alex. Alex is completely unimpressed. It's a board game after all, and those are basically extinct. He tosses it aside and spends the evening glued to his video game console instead. Later that night, Alex is jolted awake by an eerie green glow filling his room, paired with the rhythmic pounding of distant drums. The noise draws him to the forgotten game, which has somehow transformed into a video game cartridge. Curiosity gets the better of him, and he slides it into his console. The moment he does, a blinding green flash erupts from the house. Fast forward 20 years. Spencer is in his bedroom, deeply focused on a video game, breezing through it like a pro. When his mom calls out, he panics and scrambles to his computer, pretending he's been studying the whole time. She pokes her head in, reminds him she's late for work, and gives him another lecture about how dangerous the world can be. Spencer doesn't argue. He already seems nervous enough. Elsewhere, Fridge, the school's star athlete, gets ready for the day. He tells his mom he's meeting Spencer before school since Spencer's been helping him keep his grades afloat. She's surprised they're still friends, but more worried that Free's terrible grades could cost him his football spot. Free shrugs it off and says everything's under control. Meanwhile, Bethany is busy crafting her perfect online persona. She spends ages staging a casual Instagram photo before finally heading to school, fully convinced that likes matter more than anything else. Spencer and Fridge meet outside a creepy rundown building they call the Freak House. Fridge points out that Spencer is wearing a rain jacket even though the sky is clear. When Spencer suddenly panics over a squirrel, Fridge grows visibly uncomfortable and just wants to get their meeting over with. Spencer hands over an essay he wrote for Fridge, a guaranteed. Fridge thanks him, but when Spencer asks to hang out later, Fridge dodges the invite with a weak excuse. It's obvious they're not as close as they used to be. As Spencer leaves, the eccentric owner of the Freak House appears and delivers a grim, rambling warning about how cruel the world really is. Spencer backs away, unsure whether to be scared or confused. At school, Bethany is supposed to be taking a test, but she's far more invested in her phone, stressing over a post that isn't getting enough attention. She doesn't notice she's distracting everyone else until her teacher catches her and assigns her detention. In gym class, Martha keeps to herself, avoiding participation entirely. When the teacher tries to encourage her, Martha fires back with an insult that roasts both the teacher and the profession as a whole. That earns her detention as well. Later, Spencer and Fridge are summoned to the principal's office. The essay Spencer wrote for Fridge turns out to be recycled from a previous assignment, and the teacher noticed. Spencer tries to take the blame, but it doesn't help. Both boys end up in detention. Fridge explodes in anger, accusing Spencer of messing things up, while Spencer snaps back that Fridge never appreciates what he does. Detention begins with a lecture about self-reflection. The supervising teacher tells them they only get one life, and moments like this are meant to force them to think about who they are and who they want to become. For their punishment, they're tasked with removing staples from stacks of old magazines. All of them must be finished before they leave. Martha is the only one who actually works. Bethany ignores the assignment entirely and stays on her phone, while Spencer and Fridge wander around the cluttered room. That's when they find an old video game console and hook it up to the TV. The game is called Jumanji, and something about it immediately feels off. Spencer and Fridge choose characters with Spencer casually claiming the choice won't matter. Bethany grabs a controller just to avoid doing any real work, and after some convincing, Martha reluctantly joins in. The moment the game starts, the room fills with the thunderous beat of drums. The console sparks, glowing an unnatural green. Spencer yanks the plug, but it's too late. He's suddenly pulled into the screen. The others scream, and then one by one they're sucked in too. Spencer crashes into a vast desert landscape, now trapped in the powerful body of Dr. Smolder Bravestone. He's soon joined by Franklin Mouse Finbar, followed by the fierce and athletic Ruby Roundhouse, and finally the awkward scholarly Professor Sheldon Oberon. It doesn't take long for the horrifying truth to sink in. They didn't just start the game, they became the characters. Fridge quickly realizes he's been dropped into the body of Mouse Finbar. Martha has become the fearless fighter, Ruby Roundhouse, and Bethany, to her absolute horror, is stuck as the overweight middle-aged scientist, Professor Sheldon Oberon. The four of them stand there in stunned silence, trying to process what just happened with about as much calm as four confused teenagers possibly can. Bethany insists this has to be a dream or some kind of coma. Spencer and the others aren't buying it. She's still arguing her point when a massive hippopotamus quietly sneaks up behind her and snaps its jaws shut, crushing her instantly. Moments later, Bethany falls out of the sky, landing safely on the ground, completely intact and very much alive. That's when reality, whatever this reality is, starts to sink in. Before they can ask any more questions, the hippo returns, clearly furious this time. The group takes off running, panic fully activated, when a jeep suddenly pulls up beside them. They pile in without thinking twice. The driver introduces himself as Nigel, and strangely enough, he already knows exactly who they are, or at least who their characters are supposed to be. He greets them like old friends and explains that they've arrived just in time because Jumanji desperately needs their help. According to Nigel, the land is under a terrible curse. The fate of the entire world rests on their shoulders, and they're the only ones who can fix it. When they try to ask questions, his responses feel oddly stiff and repetitive. That's when Spencer puts it together. Nigel isn't a real person. He's an NPC, a non-playable character programmed to say only certain lines. Nigel launches into a flashback explaining the situation. Long ago, Dr. Bravestone's former partner, Professor Russell Van Pelt, became obsessed with locating the sacred jewel of Jumanji. When he finally tore it from its resting place at top a jaguar statue, a dark force consumed him, granting him control over the land and its creatures. The jungle fell under a powerful curse. Soon after, Nigel managed to steal the jewel away, but he couldn't return it himself. That task now belongs to them. Before sending them off, Nigel recites a cryptic verse. Return the jewel, lift the curse. If you wish to leave this place, save Jumanji and speak its name. With that, Nigel kicks them out of the Jeep and drives away, leaving them alone and completely bewildered. Now on their own, the group takes a moment to face the uncomfortable truth of who they are. Spencer is a nervous kid, trapped in the body of a fearless hero. Fridge is a powerful athlete stuck in a tiny frame. Martha, shy and introverted, now looks like a confident action star. And Bethany, obsessed with appearances, is trapped in a body she can't stand. It's awkward, it's overwhelming. But Spencer believes he's got this. He plays video games. This is basically his world. He convinces the group that if they follow the rules, return the jewel, and beat the game, they'll get sent home. Their first destination is the bazaar. They pull out the map and quickly realize that only Bethany, or rather Professor Sheldon, can actually read it. That's when they notice each character has special abilities. Spencer has enhanced strength and bravery. Ruby is a combat expert. Mouse is a zoologist who can carry huge amounts of gear. And Bethany, she's the brains. Bethany starts guiding them until engines roar in the distance. Dozens of armed men on motorcycles come, charging toward them, firing weapons and launching explosives. The group runs for their lives. Rockets explode around them. Bullets rain down from every direction. Spencer sprints at superhuman speed. Martha leaps effortlessly through the trees, and Bethany somehow manages to keep up. Fridge, on the other hand, struggles badly with his short legs. Spencer ends up carrying him as they race into the jungle. They burst out of the forest and reach a cliff overlooking a river below. With no other option, all four jump. They land hard near the riverbank. Martha reveals she's been shot and collapses dead. Seconds later, she responds. That's when they realize the truth. Each of them has 3 lives. Bethany already lost one to the hippo, and Martha just lost hers. Lose all 3 and it's game over. Elsewhere, Van Pelt is informed that they escaped. Furious, he sends more hunters and creatures after them. As they continue toward the bazaar, tensions rise. Bethany and Martha begin to bond, while Spencer and Fridge clash. Fridge blames Spencer for everything that's happening, while Spencer accuses Fridge of abandoning him long before this mess began. The argument escalates, and Fridge shoves Spencer off a cliff, killing him. When Spencer responds, the message finally sinks in. They can't afford to fight. If they don't work together, none of them will make it out alive. At the bazaar, they uncover a clue leading them to a single room containing a basket, and inside it, a deadly viper guarding the missing piece of their map. Using teamwork and careful timing, they lure the snake away and retrieve what they came for. Unfortunately, the reward is underwhelming. The missing piece turns out to be an elephant statue, and yet another riddle. Before they can solve it, armed figures close in from all sides. Von Pelt's men have found them. The group tries to fight their way out of the bazaar, and for a brief moment, it actually looks like they might pull it off. But the enemies keep coming, and they're quickly surrounded. Just as things seem hopeless, a smoke bomb suddenly fills the area, plunging everything into chaos. A mysterious figure in a cloak appears and guides them through hidden tunnels beneath the market, leading them safely into the sewers. Their rescuer introduces himself as Jefferson Seplain McDana. He explains that he's also trapped inside the game. Seplain takes them to a hidden shelter, offers them drinks, and tells them he's been surviving there for what feels like months. He admits that he's died twice already and has been stuck on the same level ever since, too afraid to keep moving forward on his own. That's when Bethany connects the dots. Seplain isn't just another player, he's the missing piece they were searching for. With him on their team, finishing the game might actually be possible. Their next challenge is a guarded hangar bay. Two heavily armed men stand between them and a helicopter they need to escape. The group decides to send Martha in first as a distraction. Bethany coaches her from afar, giving advice on how to use charm to throw the guards off. It sounds ridiculous, but they're out of options. As Martha approaches, Seplain casually drops a few phrases that sound way out of date. That's when the truth comes out. He's actually Alex Vreek, the teenager who vanished after finding the game decades earlier. While they process this, Spencer quietly admits to Fridge that he has feelings for Martha. Fridge encourages him to do something about it, but Spencer immediately chickens out. At the hangar, Martha's attempt at flirting completely crashes and burns. But almost without thinking, she switches gears and starts fighting back. One of her hidden abilities turns out to be combat mixed with dance. And with a cheesy love song blasting from the guard's radio, she completely wipes the floor with them. The team steals the helicopter and takes off, but their escape is far from smooth. To lose their pursuers, they're forced to fly through a narrow canyon filled with a stampede of enraged rhinos. The animals slam into the helicopter, shaking it violently. In the chaos, Fridge accidentally drops the sacred jewel. With no choice, they turn back to retrieve it. Spencer throws Fridge out of the helicopter to distract the rhinos. Fridge is immediately trampled, losing a life, while Spencer sneaks in and grabs the jewel. When Fridge respawns mid-air, Spencer manages to catch him before he hits the ground. Against all odds, they clear the canyon and make it through the level. Alex is overjoyed until a mosquito bites him, triggering one of his weaknesses. Without hesitating, Bethany sacrifices one of her remaining lives to save him, proving just how much she's changed. With a rare moment of calm, the group finally catches their breath. Bethany and Alex grow closer while Spencer finally admits his feelings to Martha. The two share an awkward but sincere first kiss. That night, they arrive at their final destination, the massive jaguar statue where the jewel must be returned. A clear path leads straight to it, but Spencer decides to take a shortcut through the trees. Unfortunately, he spots a squirrel, panics, falls, and loses another life. It's clear now the only way forward is together. Fridge steps up and comes up with a plan. He, Alex, and Bethany will distract Van Pelt and his army, while Spencer makes a break for the statue. The plan nearly falls apart when Von Pelt captures Bethany, holding a blade to her throat and demanding the jewel. Thinking fast, Fridge uses his zoology skills to summon an elephant, creating just enough chaos for Bethany to escape. The final push begins. Spencer races up the mountain on a motorcycle toward the statue. Meanwhile, Bethany finds herself trapped in a pit full of deadly cobras. With no other option, she allows herself to be bitten, sacrificing her last life. She vanishes, then reappears high in the air. As she falls, Bethany tosses the jewel toward Spencer. He catches it mid-air, lands on top of the jaguar statue, and slams the jewel back into its rightful place. With everything on the line, he shouts the game's name aloud. Jumanji! Instantly, the curse breaks. The land transforms, becoming peaceful once more. The five of them stand together, stunned that they actually pulled it off. Nigel arrives in his Jeep, congratulating them and promising to send them home. Everyone agrees immediately except Spencer, who's afraid of returning to his old insecure self. With encouragement from Bethany, he finally accepts. Back in the real world, the four friends return to detention, barely believing the adventure is over. But Alex is missing. They rush to the freak house only to find it completely restored. Inside, Alex is there, now grown up. He explains that he was sent back to the night he first entered the game and has been waiting ever since. The group laughs, amazed at how everything turned out. The experience changed all of them. Spencer is braver. Fridge finally cares about more than sports. Martha isn't alone anymore. And Bethany has learned how to care about people beyond herself. To make sure the game never traps anyone again, the four friends take the console into an alley and destroy it for good. Analysis. What if I told you that one of the most unexpectedly successful modern adventure movies started as a remake nobody asked for? When Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle was first announced, most people rolled their eyes. A reboot of a beloved classic decades later with a completely different tone. It sounded like the perfect recipe for disappointment. But then something surprising happened. Instead of copying the original, this movie changed the rules of the game. Literally, Jumanji was no longer just a cursed board game. It evolved into a video game complete with avatars, strengths, weaknesses, and extra lives. And that single creative decision changed everything. What makes this movie stand out isn't just the action or the comedy. It's how it uses humor to explore identity, insecurity, and self-acceptance, all while keeping the pace fast and entertaining. This isn't just a jungle adventure. It's a story about being trapped in someone else's body, forced to confront who you really are, and learning that your flaws might be your greatest advantage. In this video, we're breaking down how Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle managed to defy expectations, reinvent a classic, and turn a risky reboot into a crowd-pleasing hit without losing the heart of what Jumanji is all about. So, buckle up, because once the drums start beating, released in 2017, Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle arrives with a bold mission: take a familiar name and completely reshape how it works for a modern audience. This time, Jumanji isn't a board game that spills chaos into the real world. Instead, it's a forgotten video game buried in time, waiting for new players to press start. And once they do, there's no pause button. The movie blends adventure, comedy, fantasy, and action. But it never lets one genre overpower the others. The jungle setting is dangerous, unpredictable, and visually vibrant, filled with traps, wild creatures, and game-like rules. that feel instantly recognizable to anyone who's ever picked up a controller. At its core, the premise is simple and spoiler-free. 4 ordinary teenagers are pulled into the world of Jumanji and forced to survive inside characters that are nothing like who they are in real life. Each avatar comes with special abilities and very specific weaknesses. To escape, they must finish the game. To finish the game, they must work together. And to work together, they must confront parts of themselves they've been avoiding. This setup gives the movie room to be funny, fast-paced, and self-aware while still building real stakes. Every life matters, every choice counts, and every mistake has consequences. What makes this version of Jumanji work is that it doesn't try to be darker or bigger than it needs to be. Instead, it focuses on fun, clarity, and character, setting the foundation for an adventure that's easy to enjoy, but smarter than it looks. On the surface, Jumanji. Welcome to the Jungle looks like a straightforward adventure comedy, but that's only half the story. Yes, it delivers jungle action, fast-paced chases, and laugh-out-loud moments. But underneath the spectacle, the movie is quietly doing something smarter. It uses genre as a tool, not a crutch. At its core, this film blends adventure, comedy, fantasy, and light action. But the real engine driving the story is character-based humor. The jokes don't just come from situations, they come from identity clashes. People trapped in bodies that don't match who they think they are. The central theme is self-acceptance. Every character enters the game carrying insecurity about their appearance, their social status, their intelligence, or their confidence. Jumanji doesn't erase those flaws, it exaggerates them. And by doing that, the movie turns comedy into a mirror. There's also a strong theme of identity versus perception. Strength doesn't always look powerful. Confidence doesn't always come from muscles. And heroism isn't about dominance, it's about growth. Emotionally, the tone stays light and accessible, but it never feels empty. The film knows its audience. It's designed for younger viewers who want fun and energy, while still offering adults something relatable beneath the laughs. That balance is what makes the movie work. It doesn't talk down to its audience, and it doesn't overcomplicate its message. It lets the jungle adventure entertain you while quietly, reminding you that sometimes the person you're trying to become is already there. The story begins in the real world with 4 high school students who couldn't be more different. They come from separate social circles, carry different insecurities, and have nothing in common except one thing: detention. While cleaning out an old storage room, they stumble upon a forgotten video game console. No instructions, no warnings, just a name on the screen: Genji. The moment the game starts, reality disappears. The teenagers are pulled into a massive jungle world, dangerous, alive, and governed by video game rules. But the real shock isn't the environment, it's who they've become. Each of them is trapped inside an avatar that represents the opposite of their real-life identity. The shy kid is now a fearless action hero. The confident athlete is suddenly small and vulnerable. Strength, intelligence, and charisma are redistributed in ways none of them expected. As they explore the jungle, they quickly learn the stakes. This isn't a game you can quit. Death has consequences, lives are limited, and survival depends on understanding the rules, both of the world and of each other. Every obstacle pushes the group closer together. What starts as panic slowly turns into strategy. What begins as mockery becomes respect. And what feels like a punishment turns into a test of character. The deeper they travel into Jumanji, the more the game forces them to confront who they really are. Not who they pretend to be at school, but who they are when stripped of status, labels, and comfort. By the time they realize how to win, they've already changed. And escaping the jungle is no longer just about finishing the mission. It's about proving they've grown enough to deserve a second chance. By the time the story reaches its final moments, one thing becomes clear. Jumanji was never just about winning a game. The final confrontation isn't simply a test of strength or skill. It's a test of everything the characters have learned since entering the jungle. Every failure, every lost life, every moment of doubt has been preparing them for this choice. What actually happens in the end is simple on the surface. The mission is completed, the curse is lifted, and balance is restored to Jumanji. But the meaning runs much deeper. Each character succeeds not by becoming someone else, but by finally accepting who they are. The confidence they borrowed from their avatars doesn't vanish. It becomes internal. The bravery, empathy, and self-belief they discovered in the game carry over into the real world. The most important moment isn't the victory itself, it's the decision to let the game go. By destroying Jumanji, the characters choose growth over escape. They reject the idea of relying on a fantasy version of themselves and accept the responsibility of living changed lives in the real world. Symbolically, the ending tells us this: you don't beat Jumanji by conquering it. You beat it by outgrowing it. There's also a quiet openness to the conclusion. The jungle may be gone, but its influence lingers. The characters return to their lives not as heroes, but as better versions of themselves, more honest, more confident, and more connected. And that's why the ending works. Because when the drums finally stop, the real victory isn't survival, it's transformation. One of the smartest things Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle, does is hide its meaning in plain sight. Almost every rule of the game doubles as a metaphor. Take the character stat screens. Strength, speed, courage, weaknesses. These aren't just gameplay mechanics. They're exaggerated reflections of who the characters are on the inside. What looks like power is often insecurity wearing a costume. And what looks like weakness is usually untapped potential. Even the concept of limited lives carries weight. Each death isn't just a reset, it's a reminder that recklessness has consequences. The movie quietly teaches growth through failure, not success. The jungle itself is symbolic. It's unpredictable, hostile, and constantly changing. Much like adolescence, you can't control it. You can only adapt. And the deeper the characters go, the more the environment forces honesty, stripping away social masks and comfort zones. There are also subtle callbacks to the original Jumanji. Familiar warning signs, thematic echoes, and narrative parallels appear throughout the film, not to copy the past, but to acknowledge it. The danger isn't nostalgia, it's stagnation. Even the non-playable characters behave like classic video game NPCs, repeating dialogue, waiting for player input, and existing only to guide the mission. It's played for laughs, but it reinforces the idea that this world isn't alive until the characters grow within it. The biggest hidden detail of all, Jumanji doesn't change people, it reveals them. And once you notice that, the movie stops being just an adventure and starts feeling personal. What makes Jumanji Welcome to the Jungle even more interesting is what happened behind the camera. This movie wasn't supposed to be a hit. Early expectations were modest at best. Many assumed it would lean heavily on nostalgia and fade quickly. Instead, smart creative choices completely reshaped its trajectory. One of the most important decisions was casting against type. The humor wasn't built around actors playing themselves. It came from deliberate role reversals. Performers studied teenage mannerisms, speech patterns, and body language to make the avatars feel like real people trapped in unfamiliar bodies. A large portion of the comedy was also allowed to breathe. Several scenes were built around controlled improvisation, giving interactions a natural rhythm instead of feeling scripted. That freedom is why many jokes feel spontaneous rather than forced. Physically, the film demanded more than it let on. Despite the comedic tone, training involved stunt work, endurance prep, and learning how to sell action without breaking character. The goal wasn't realism, it was consistency within the game's rules. There were also ideas that never made the final cut. Early drafts explored darker consequences for failure inside the game, but the filmmakers ultimately chose clarity and fun over heaviness, keeping the experience accessible without losing stakes. Behind the scenes, the biggest risk turned out to be the movie's greatest strength, trusting the concept by leaning fully into the game mechanics instead of apologizing for them. The film found its voice, and that confidence is exactly what audiences responded to. Any movie that carries a legacy title invites comparison, and Jumanji Welcome to the Jungle is no exception. The most obvious comparison is with the 1995 Jumanji. That film treated the game like a horror-adjacent force, chaotic, mysterious, and uncontrollable. The danger spilled into the real world, turning everyday spaces into battlegrounds. Welcome to the Jungle flips that idea. Instead of chaos entering reality, people willingly enter chaos. Tonally, the difference is clear. The original leaned darker and more unpredictable. The 2017 film leans self-aware, comedic, and character-driven. It's less about fear and more about growth. Neither approach is wrong. They're simply designed for different generations. The movie also sits alongside other trapped-in-a-game stories, but where many similar films focus on spectacle or survival alone, Welcome to the Jungle puts its energy into identity-based storytelling. The game isn't just something to beat, it's something to learn from. Compared to other modern reboots, this one stands out by not copying what came before. It doesn't try to recreate iconic moments shot for shot. Instead, it updates the premise to match how audiences interact with games today. Where the film may fall short is in mystery. The world of Jumanji is more explained, more structured, and less eerie than the original. But that trade-off allows for tighter pacing, clearer rules, and stronger comedic timing. In the end, Welcome to the Jungle doesn't replace the original, it reinterprets it. And that distinction is why the comparison works in its favor. When Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle finally hit theaters, the reaction surprised almost everyone. Audiences walked in skeptical. A reboot of a childhood favorite rarely inspires confidence. But word of mouth spread fast, and it wasn't ironic praise. People were genuinely having fun. Viewers responded strongly to the cast chemistry, the humor, and the surprisingly heartfelt character arcs. For many, the movie exceeded expectations simply by understanding what it wanted to be. It didn't chase prestige, it chased entertainment with purpose. Critics, on the other hand, were more divided. While many praised the film's energy and reinvention of the concept, some pointed out familiar story beats and a predictable structure. But even among mixed reviews, one point kept coming up again and again. The movie was far better than it had any right to be. Over time, the conversation shifted. What was once seen as a risky reboot started to feel like an example of how legacy titles should evolve. The film gained a reputation not as a replacement for the original, but as a successful imagining that respected its roots without being trapped by them. Is it overrated? Not really. Underrated? Possibly. The truth is, welcome to the jungle in that rare middle ground, a movie that didn't aim to be iconic, but became memorable by being honest, fun, and self-aware. And sometimes that's the hardest balance to strike. So, where does Jumanji Welcome to the Jungle ultimately land? At its best, this movie succeeds because it understands its own identity. It doesn't try to outdo the original. It doesn't chase darker tones or force nostalgia. Instead, it commits fully to being fun, character-driven, and surprisingly thoughtful. Its biggest strength is the ensemble dynamic. The performances bounce off each other with energy and timing that elevate even familiar story beats. The humor lands because it's rooted in personality, not just punchlines, and the game world concept gives the story structure without suffocating creativity. That said, the film isn't without flaws. The narrative follows a recognizable path, and the villain lacks depth compared to the hero's arcs. But these weaknesses never derail the experience. They simply remind you that this movie prioritizes momentum over complexity. So, who should watch it? If you enjoy adventure films that don't take themselves too seriously, if you appreciate character growth wrapped in comedy, or if you're skeptical of reboots but open to being surprised, this movie is worth your time. Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle isn't a masterpiece, but it doesn't need to be. It's a confident, entertaining reinvention that proves one thing: when you respect the spirit of a story instead of copying it, even the riskiest reboot can win. And that's a game worth playing. Revs. I'll be honest, I went in with pretty low expectations. The marketing didn't completely win me over, and I was concerned the movie might lean into childish humor instead of delivering something genuinely fun. I was also unsure about the cast choices. Still, as someone trying to catch as many 2017 releases as possible, and as a fan of light escapist entertainment, the Jumanji concept and the original Robin Williams classic, I decided to give Jumanji Welcome to the Jungle a perting anticipated. While it's certainly not a cinematic masterpiece, the movie clearly aims to be slick, energetic escapism, and it succeeds. I still hold the original film in higher regard, but aside from sharing a title and core premise, this installment feels like its own thing and deserves to be judged on those terms. I can understand why it wouldn't work for everyone, though overall I've seen more positive reactions than negative ones. The weakest portion is the opening stretch set in the real world. The first 20 minutes drag a bit, functioning mostly as setup and lacking momentum. The writing can feel awkward here, and the performances don't fully click until the story transitions into the game world. Once that happens, however, the film finds its rhythm. Most of the cast fares well once things get going. Nick Jonas, unfortunately, feels flat and forgettable. Kevin Hart is more restrained than usual, but his loud, fast-talking routine still wears thin at times, even though he does land some genuinely funny moments. That style is very much a love it or hate it thing. Where the film truly shines is in delivering fun. Despite a runtime of about 2 hours, the pacing improves dramatically once the characters enter. Jumanji and the time flies. The plot is extremely predictable, and the outcomes are rarely in doubt. But the vibrant energy, adventurous action, and constant sense of playful danger more than make up for it. The script balances humor with unexpected warmth, and while Hart's profanity pops up, it never crosses into obnoxious or juvenile territory. The visual effects are impressive. The jungle world is colorful and immersive, and the direction is confident and lively. The score is upbeat and memorable, and the finale is surprisingly heartfelt without feeling forced. There's even a subtle nod to Robin Williams and Alan Parrish that longtime fans will appreciate if they're paying attention. Dwayne Johnson delivers exactly what you expect. Charisma, intensity, and star power. It's familiar territory for him, but he handles it well. Karen Gillan more than keeps pace with her co-stars, bringing charm, confidence, and humor to her role. Her scene learning how to flirt and dance is a standout moment. Bobby Cannavale makes for a suitably intimidating villain, though he isn't given quite enough to do. Jack Black, however, absolutely steals the movie. His comedic timing is impeccable. His best material comes in rapid succession, and this may be his strongest performance since School of Rock. The character dynamics are a major highlight. The setup places 4 very different teenagers in detention. Spencer is caught doing homework for his former friend, Fridge. Bethany is glued to her phone during a test, and Martha lashes out at her PE teacher. While cleaning out a basement room, they stumble across an old video game console, Jumanji. Once activated, they're sucked into the game and assigned avatars that are the complete opposites of who they are in real life. Spencer becomes the muscle-bound Dr. Smolder Bravestone. Fridge is turned into a pint-sized zoologist. Bethany finds herself trapped in the body of a middle-aged male professor, and Martha transforms into a fierce, agile fighter. The result is pure fun. The laughs come often, and the chemistry among the 4 leads is excellent. Johnson and Hart have obvious comedic synergy. Jack Black is hilarious playing against gender expectations, and Gillan proves she has sharp comedic instincts beneath the action hero exterior. The only real weak link remains Nick Jonas, whose limited role feels stiff and underwhelming. A surprise cameo from a larger-than-L life action star might have elevated that part, but it's a minor issue in an otherwise enjoyable experience. One particularly grating character early on is the self-absorbed, phone-obsessed teen played by Madison Iseman. She's intentionally obnoxious, and those few minutes are hard to sit through, though thankfully brief, as she quickly transitioned into Jack Black's avatar. The remaining teens are far less irritating, coming across as immature but tolerable rather than unbearable. As a follow-up, arriving more than 2 decades after the 1995 original, this film wisely avoids heavy reliance on nostalgia. With only a few callbacks, it feels more like a fresh beginning than a retread. Watching the characters inhabit bodies that are the exact opposites of their real selves adds a layer of poetic justice, especially when the popular girl suddenly has to cope with being someone completely different. That moment alone, paired with Jack Black's horrified reaction in the mirror, is worth the price of admission. Overall, Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle delivers exactly what it sets out to be: an energetic, funny, family-friendly adventure that doesn't take itself too seriously, and that's what makes it work. This time around, the story trades suburban chaos for full-on jungle mayhem, which instantly gives it a different flavor. Watching grown actors convincingly channel awkward teenagers is half the fun, especially when Jack Black's character meets a particularly absurd fate involving a hippo, learns some very questionable life lessons, and serves as a hilarious commentary on social media obsession and toxic popularity culture. The film doesn't demand deep analysis. Its strengths lie in its pace, humor, and sheer energy. While it doesn't quite recapture the originality of the first film, it's lively, entertaining, and packed with memorable moments. Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle Works, is both a loose sequel and a modern reimagining of the 1995 classic. There's a subtle connection to the original character portrayed by Robin Williams, but this version confidently stands on its own. Where the original was known for its then groundbreaking CGI animal stampede, this film highlights just how far visual effects have come. Everything looks smoother, bigger, and more immersive. The setup feels almost like a modern breakfast club. 4 very different high school students land in detention and stumble upon an old video game console hidden away in their school. Inside it is Jumanji, now redesigned as a multiplayer video game. Once they press play, they're pulled into the game world where each teen becomes an avatar that couldn't be more different from who they are in real life. Spencer, the shy gamer, transforms into the fearless and unstoppable Dr. Smolder Bravestone, played by Dwayne Johnson. Fridge, the confident football star, is reduced to Brave's compact sidekick, zoologist Franklin Mouse Finbar, portrayed by Kevin Hart, complete with an unfortunate weakness for cake. Bethany, the self-absorbed social media queen, ends up as the awkward and overweight male Grayfer, Professor Shelley Oberon, while the intelligent but introverted Martha becomes the fierce and athletic adventurer Ruby Roundhouse. Together, they must complete the game's quest by returning a powerful stolen artifact, all while facing dangerous creatures, villains, and classic video game-style challenges. The film leans heavily into gaming tropes, extra lives, character strengths, and weaknesses, but uses them cleverly for both comedy and tension. I never thought the original Jumanji quite nailed its balance between fantasy and humor, often feeling a bit clunky. This version benefits greatly from the chemistry between Johnson and Hart, who clearly enjoy bouncing off each other. Director Jake Kasdan delivers more than a lazy reboot. He injects genuine character development, particularly through Spencer and Martha's evolving confidence and connection. There's even an interesting moment where Bravestone questions whether staying in the game might be better than returning to reality. As someone who adored the original Jumanji growing up, I even saw it twice in theaters. The idea of a sequel or reboot initially felt unnecessary, but after seeing the trailers, curiosity went out. The film opens in 1996, when a teenager named Alex discovers the Jumanji board game, only for it to magically morph into a video game that traps him inside. Decades later, the cycle repeats, with a new group of students, tying the past and present together neatly. Overall, Welcome to the Jungle may not surpass its predecessor, but it's fast-paced, funny, and surprisingly heartfelt. It understands what made the original memorable while updating it for a new generation. And that's no small achievement. Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle takes the classic concept and flips it for a modern audience, trading the board game for a video game while keeping the sense of adventure alive. The story follows 4 very different high school students who end up in detention together. Spencer, a smart but socially awkward kid. Fridge, his athletic best friend, who's struggling academically. Bethany, a self-absorbed social media queen. And Martha, an intelligent but cynical student who despises gym class. While cleaning out an old classroom, they stumble upon a dusty gaming console with a mysterious cartridge simply labeled Jumanji. Once they power it on and choose their characters, things take a wild turn. They're suddenly pulled into the game itself and dropped into a dangerous jungle world. Now trapped inside the bodies of their chosen avatars, Spencer becomes the powerful and fearless Dr. Smolder Bravestone. Fridge ends up as the pint-sized zoologist Moose Finbar. Bethany is shocked to find herself transformed into the middle-aged Professor Shelley Oberon, and Martha emerges as the highly skilled fighter Ruby Roundhouse. Each avatar comes with specific strengths, weaknesses, and most importantly, a limited number of lives. To escape, the group must survive a series of increasingly dangerous levels and return a precious gem known as the Jaguar's Eye to its rightful place. Along the way, teamwork becomes essential as they face deadly wildlife, hostile enemies, and the relentless hunter, Von Pelt, and his forces. One by one, lives are lost through mishaps, poor choices, and surprise attacks, raising the stakes as the game progresses. Midway through their journey, the players encounter a 5th character, Alex, an experienced gamer who has been stuck inside Jumanji for decades. His avatar, pilot Jefferson Seplane McDana, has survived alone by hiding in a treehouse originally built by a previous player. With only 1 life left, Alex is stunned to learn how much time has passed in the real world. The group quickly bonds with him and promises to help him finally escape the game. During a risky helicopter mission to reach the massive Jaguar statue, tragedy nearly strikes when Alex loses his final life after a seemingly minor injury. In a touching moment, Bethany saves him by performing CPR, unknowingly sacrificing one of her own lives to bring him back. It's a key turning point that highlights how much the characters have grown since entering the game. The final showdown sees all 5 players combining their abilities to outwit Van Pelt and his guards. Through clever distractions and teamwork, they manage to return the jewel, call out the game's name, and bring the adventure to an end. The villains are defeated, the jungle collapses, and the players are transported back to the real world. Back at school, life has changed in unexpected ways. Alex is no longer missing. Instead, he reappears as an adult, having been returned to the past where history was rewritten. He's now happily married with a daughter named Bethany, honoring the girl who saved his life. The 14s also return, transformed. Spencer and Fridge repair their friendship. Martha opens herself up to romance, and Bethany becomes more grounded and empathetic. The film leans heavily into comedy and action, with Dwayne Johnson delivering dependable heroics, Kevin Hart and Jack Black providing consistent laughs, and Karen Gillan bringing both toughness and humor to her role, though her costume did spark some debate. While the plot can feel uneven at times and the danger could have been pushed further, the visual effects are strong and the set pieces, especially the animal stampede and helicopter sequence, are memorable. As a standalone sequel that respectfully nods to the original and pays tribute to Robin Williams' Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle succeeds as light, family-friendly entertainment. It may be predictable, but its message about self-acceptance and personal growth lands well. Ultimately, it delivers exactly what it promises: a fun, fast-paced adventure packed with laughs, action, and old-school escapism. The story kicks off when four very different high school students end up stuck in detention, where they come across an old video game that unexpectedly pulls them into its digital world. Once inside, they encounter a guide who explains the rules. To escape, they must complete a quest by returning a stolen gem to its rightful place. Survival depends on learning how to use their new abilities, compensate for their weaknesses, and most importantly, work together. Each character has 3 lives, but no one is entirely sure what happens if those run out. And the assumption that it could mean real death adds genuine tension. Although I never saw the original Jumanji, this reboot caught my interest thanks to its fun premise and a cast I've enjoyed in previous films. In an unexpected way, it reminded me of The Breakfast Club, not just because it involves detention, but because it slowly peels back stereotypes. Characters who initially seem one-dimensional are forced into avatars that are the complete opposite of who they are in real life, which becomes a clever way to explore insecurity, confidence, and growth. The cast is clearly having a great time, and it shows. Dwayne Johnson is particularly entertaining as a hero who looks unstoppable, but is actually riddled with anxiety. Jack Black steals many scenes by portraying a teenage girl trapped in a middle-aged man's body, and the performance is played for laughs without becoming mean-spirited. Kevin Hart and Karen Gillan also shine, balancing comedy with surprisingly solid character moments. From an action standpoint, the film delivers exactly what it promises. The CGI is convincing, the set pieces are energetic, and the lush Hawaiian landscapes do a fantastic job of selling the dangerous world of Jumanji. The villain is fairly thin, but that actually works within the story. After all, this is a video game, and the non-player characters are intentionally limited and repetitive for comedic effect. What really elevates the movie is how well it understands video game logic, from visible life counters to explanation of cutscenes. The film leans into gaming mechanics instead of ignoring them. The mystery surrounding what happens after the final life is lost never feels like a plot hole. Instead, it adds suspense for both the characters and the audience. Director Jake Kasdan may not be known for massive blockbuster spectacles, but his strength lies in comedy and character interaction, and that's where the film succeeds most. The action is competent rather than groundbreaking, but the performances and humor do the heavy lifting. The movie also cleverly plays with audience expectations by flipping the usual personas of its stars, letting them stretch in unexpected ways. While the plot doesn't offer many surprises, it doesn't really need to. The mix of adventure, humor, and likable characters keeps things moving at a fun pace. Even potentially awkward joke, like a teenager adjusting to life in a different body, are handled with enough care to avoid crossing into offensive territory. Overall, this turned out to be a pleasant surprise. What could have been a forgettable remake instead becomes a genuinely entertaining adventure. Fans of classic action films in the Indiana Jones vein, or anyone looking for a smart, funny crowd pleaser, will likely walk away satisfied. This movie works largely because the script is smarter than it has any right to be. You can feel how much effort went into squeezing humor and character development out of the premise, and for the most part, it pays off. The writing finds comedy not just in jokes, but in contrast, who these characters think they are versus who they become once they're thrown into chaos. Every major cast member gets something meaningful to work with, even if some arcs are more obvious than others. Still, the underlying message lands. Growth comes from looking past surface-level labels and confronting the traits that hold you back, whether that's selfishness, overconfidence, or plain arrogance. That said, the humor doesn't always hit with equal force. One character in particular is stuck playing a single exaggerated note for much of the runtime. And while it's funny at first, it starts to wear thin when the writing doesn't give them anything clever to do with it. Surprisingly, another cast member, often known for loud, broad comedy, ends up delivering sharper and more effective laughs, either because the material suits them better or because they lean into audience expectations more strategically. Midway through the story, a new character is introduced to raise the stakes and add intrigue. And while this addition makes sense narratively and ties nicely into the film's setup, the performance itself doesn't quite stand out compared to the rest of the ensemble. This might be less about weakness and more about how strong the core cast already is. The film isn't without its logic gaps. Certain game mechanics are introduced without much explanation and then never really addressed again, which may frustrate viewers who think too hard about the rules. The action sequences are competently staged but rarely memorable, serving the story rather than elevating it. There's nothing visually groundbreaking here. It works, but it doesn't surprise. Still, what makes the movie enjoyable is the clear sense that everyone involved actually cares. The performances feel engaged, the dialogue has intention, and the characters evolve in believable ways within the boundaries of a family-friendly adventure. If the trailer didn't completely turn you off and you enjoy the cast, there's a good chance you'll walk away more entertained than expected. It's not a must-see blockbuster, but it's a solid, fun alternative. The kind of movie you put on when you're in the mood for something light, but not completely empty. The story follows 4 high school students stuck in detention who stumble upon an old video game hidden away in school storage. Once they start playing, they're pulled into the game's world and transformed into wildly different avatars. The shy brainiac becomes a fearless action hero. The cocky athlete is reduced to a pint-sized sidekick. The self-absorbed popular girl finds herself trapped in the body of a middle-aged male academic, and the quiet overachiever becomes a confident, highly skilled fighter. To escape, they must finish the game. But with only a limited number of lives, every mistake comes at a cost. As someone who enjoyed the original film years ago, I went in wary of how a modern revival might affect its legacy. Thankfully, this entry doesn't try to replicate the past. Instead of magical chaos spilling into the real world, it embraces a fast-paced video game-inspired structure that leans harder into comedy than suspense. The humor drawn from the clash between real personalities and in-game avatars is consistently effective, and the film has fun poking at video game tropes along the way. The cast fully commits to the absurdity, and while some performances are intentionally over the top, the tone demands it. One standout moment involves an awkward attempt at flirtation that perfectly captures the film's willingness to laugh at discomfort rather than avoid it. Even the more cartoonish CGI elements feel appropriate given the digital setting. This is ultimately popcorn entertainment, predictable, occasionally messy, but far more enjoyable than expected. It may not reach greatness, but it's confident, self-aware, and surprisingly thoughtful beneath the jokes. For a modern reimagining of a beloved property, that's more than enough. Genji, welcome. To the Jungle wisely avoids leaning too hard on easy nostalgia or constantly reminding viewers that it follows a beloved 1990s classic. Instead of endlessly referencing the Robin Williams film, it establishes its own identity, borrowing more from modern action comedies than from the whimsical tone of the original Jumanji. Whether that works or not largely depends on what audiences expect going in. This sequel moves even further away from Chris Van Berg's original book, keeping only a handful of lore nuts to justify its connection and to lure longtime fans back into the jungle. One of the biggest changes is the nature of the game itself. Jumanji is no longer a dusty board game. It has evolved into a video game, adapting to a new generation of players. This update initially felt like it might strip away the magic that defined the original, but the film smartly explains the shift, presenting Jumanji as a game that constantly reinvents itself in order to be played. The movie is clearly divided into two halves. The real world, where we meet the characters as ordinary teenagers, and the game world, where they reappear as exaggerated avatars with unique abilities and weaknesses. Director Jake Kasdan wastes no time introducing the four leads, setting up their personalities and flaws with a brisk, playful rhythm reminiscent of classic teen films like The Breakfast Club and Mean Girls. Their detention mishap leads them straight into the updated version of Jumanji. And once they choose their avatars, everything changes. Inside the game, each character is forced to confront a version of themselves that challenges how they see their place in the real world. The central mission, defeating the villainous Van Pelt, played by Bobby Cannavale, is arguably the film's weakest element. He's a fairly forgettable antagonist who eventually feels more like an accidental parody than a genuine threat. Still, the focus is clearly not on the villain, but on the journey and character dynamics. Unlike the original film, which brought the jungle into reality, this sequel keeps the action almost entirely within Jumanji itself. This decision preserves a sense of originality and allows the film to further explore the world Alan Parrish once survived, while subtly honoring both the character and Robin Williams with a respectful and emotional musical cue. At its core, Welcome to the Jungle functioned as a tribute not through imitation, but through spirit. One of the script's smartest choices is flipping character roles for comedic effect. The shy, awkward teens become confident, powerful heroes like Dr. Smolder Bravestone, Dwayne Johnson, and Ruby Roundhouse, Karen Gillan. While the popular kids are stuck with less glamorous avatars, this body-swapping mechanic gives the cast plenty of room to play, and most of the early jokes land well. Watching Johnson react to his own over-the-top physique is amusing, but Jack Black is the undeniable standout, playing a teenage girl trapped in a middle-aged man's body. Black delivers a performance full of sharp physical comedy and exaggerated mannerisms that never feel forced. He walks a fine line that could have easily become uncomfortable, yet somehow avoids crossing it, earning some of the film's biggest laughs. The humor throughout the movie is uneven. The Johnson-Kevin Hart pairing leans heavily on familiar territory, size jokes, frantic yelling and crude humor. While serviceable, their dynamic feels like the least inventive aspect of the comedy. Gillen's character, however, adds a more thoughtful layer. Her frustration with, her avatar's revealing outfit evolves into a subtle critique of how women are often sexualized in games and media, with clear echoes of characters like Lara Croft. Gillen balances humor, confidence, and self-awareness with ease, proving she can handle both action and comedy equally well. Overall, Jumanji. Welcome to the Jungle may not replicate the magic of the original, but it succeeds by carving out its own space, offering a modern, character-driven adventure that respects its roots without being trapped by them. While Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle clearly leans into comedy, it often does so at the expense of strong action. When the film does attempt large-scale set pieces, they rarely leave a lasting impression. Explosions, chases, and combat exist, but mostly as background noise rather than memorable highlights. Fans of the original film, especially those who admired the tension and sense of danger crafted by Joe Johnston, may walk away feeling underwhelmed. This new version trades suspense for a lighter, more playful adventure that prioritizes humor above all else. The missions within the game world are loosely constructed, and the narrative itself is fairly disposable, moving toward a predictable and formula-driven conclusion. The mechanics of limited lives and character abilities are handled in an overly rigid way, feeling more administrative than dramatic. The villain, portrayed with a notable lack of enthusiasm, is thinly written, and much of his backstory is awkwardly delivered through cutscenes rather than meaningful interaction. That said, predictability is not entirely a flaw here. The story does exactly what it sets out to do: transport its characters from point A to point B with minimal complexity. The movie embraces the absurdity of its premise. Teenagers trapped inside a video game and never pretends to take itself seriously. This self-awareness works in its favor, especially when the script pokes fun at familiar video game tropes. Expository NPC dialogue, awkward cutscene transitions, and exaggerated character stats are all used cleverly to generate laughs and highlight the quirks of gaming culture. Still, the film stumbles in several areas. The antagonist lacks depth and motivation beyond a generic desire for power. Many jokes are recycled too often, causing the humor to wear thin. The script also has a habit of over-explaining simple plot points, underestimating the audience's ability to follow along. In the latter half of the movie, unnecessary detours and poorly justified challenges begin to pile up, slowing the pacing. Attempts at emotional development are similarly weak. Dramatic moments feel rushed and undercooked, and the relationships between the characters rarely evolve beyond surface-level bonding. This lack of depth becomes especially noticeable toward the ending, where emotional payoffs are expected but never fully earned. For many viewers, Jumanji represents a nostalgic piece of childhood. While this reboot aims to introduce the franchise to a new generation, it retains very little from the original beyond the name, the game, concept, and a handful of familiar creatures. Even so, the film manages to be an unexpectedly enjoyable experience. It's energetic, humorous, and packed with clever nods to both the original movie and modern video games. Under Jake Kasdan's direction, the action scenes, though not groundbreaking, are competently staged and entertaining enough. Did the movie need to borrow the Jumanji brand to succeed? Not really. In doing so, it abandons the darker tone and subtle sense of fear that once define the game. Instead of dreading Jumanji, audiences are invited to imagine themselves inside it, stronger, braver, and equipped with superhuman abilities. The dangers are toned down, making the adventure more approachable, but far less intense. By consistently choosing the simplest solutions to its conflicts, the film never reaches the cultural impact of its predecessor. It's light-hearted entertainment, clearly designed as a fun distraction rather than a lasting classic, and at times it shows a lack of trust in its audience's intelligence. Still, the performances help elevate the material. Dwayne Johnson delivers a refreshingly self-aware turn, poking fun at his own larger-than-life image with deadpan commitment. Jack Black, however, steals the show with an outrageous performance that pushes the body swap comedy to its limits. Kevin Hart and Karen Gillan round out the cast with solid comedic energy, making the ridiculous premise surprisingly engaging. In the end, Welcome to the Jungle is a glossy, joke-filled adventure that doesn't aim high but succeeds at being entertaining. It may not redefine the franchise, but it offers enough laughs and charm to justify the journey. Each character in Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle, enters the game armed with a specific set of abilities meant to help them survive a wild scavenger-style quest. How long the adventure lasts is left entirely to chance and a bit of luck. This sequel is shepherded by writers Chris McKenna, Jeff Pinkner, Scott Rosenberg, and Eric Smears, who cleverly connected to Joe Johnston's 1995 Jumanji while reshaping the concept for an audience raised on consoles rather than board games. The result is a high-energy, over-the-top ride that fully embraces its own absurdity from opening scene to final shot. Logic isn't exactly invited to the party here, but momentum never falters. The movie barrels forward with relentless enthusiasm, turning its implausible premise into a strength rather than a flaw. Like the Robin Williams original, the story begins in the real world before plunging into fantasy. This time, however, the focus shifts heavily toward 4 modern high school students who become the heart of the narrative. Visually, the film benefits from far superior CGI, delivering action sequences that far outshine the clunky effects of the 1995 version, especially a certain crocodile encounter that's hard to forget. A clever twist even allows the characters to bend mortality itself, giving death a temporary sting rather than a permanent end. The story opens where the original left off, on a beach where the cursed board game was once buried. A teenager uncovers it, unknowingly triggering the next chapter. Overnight, the game adapts to the times, transforming into a video game console. Once powered on, it pulls the player straight out of reality and into its dangerous digital jungle. 2 decades later, we meet the main group, Spencer Gilpin, a nervous gamer caught plagiarizing for his football star friend, Bethany Walker, a social media-obsessed student busted for texting during a test, and Martha Capley, a withdrawn teen who refuses to participate in gym class. All 4 wind up in detention under the watch of their unimpressed principal. What begins as a familiar teen movie setup quickly swerves into chaos. While cleaning a storage room, the students discover the strange console and decide to play, mistaking it for a generic fighting game. Instead of controlling avatars, they become them. Spencer transforms into muscle-bound adventurer Smolder Bravestone. Fridge is shocked to find himself trapped in the diminutive body of zoologist Moose Finbar. Bethy's worst nightmare comes true when she wakes up as middle-aged Professor Shelley Oberon. Martha, meanwhile, blossoms into the confident and lethal Ruby Roundhouse, a martial arts expert with style to spare. Though the sequel honors the spirit of the original film, it diverges in key ways. The earlier Jumanji followed a single child trapped in the game, later pursued by a villainous hunter after escaping. That film leaned into chaos, spilling into suburbia. This new version expands the scope by forcing teamwork inside the game itself. The characters are dropped dramatically into the jungle, quickly discovering tattoo life counters on their wrists. Death is possible but not final, which adds both tension and humor as characters repeatedly test their limits. What truly elevates Welcome to the Jungle is its cast of likable, well-defined heroes. Each avatar reflects the insecurities and flaws of the teenager inside, creating comedy rooted in character rather than slapstick alone. Watching a fearless looking hero panic at the sight of danger is endlessly funny once you remember who's really in control. Scenes like Bethany awkwardly teaching Ruby how to flirt stand out as genuine highlights, proving the script gives everyone a moment to shine. By the time the credits roll, it's clear the film is more than just a sequel. It feels like a full reinvention of the franchise. With a massive global box office haul approaching $900 million against a modest budget, the success practically guarantees that Jumanji isn't finished, rolling the dice anytime soon. This movie honestly caught me off guard going in. My expectations were extremely low. I had seen the original Jumanji years ago and thought it was just fine, nothing terrible, but it never really clicked with me. I am also not particularly fond of Robin Williams' style, so that probably didn't help. When I found out that this sequel starred Dwayne Johnson, my excitement didn't exactly increase since he isn't one of my favorite actors either. So overall, I was prepared for something very average. The opening didn't help much, especially with the introduction of Madison Iceman's character, who I initially found quite irritating. But once the group is pulled into the game world, everything shifts, and in a surprisingly good way. The smartest decision the film makes is flipping the teenagers' personalities once they become adults inside the game. Seeing Johnson play the awkward, insecure nerd Spencer, Kevin Hart portray the former star athlete now trapped in a small body, Jack Black embody a shallow popular girl, and Karen Gillan transform into a fearless action hero is where the movie truly shines. The comedy works so well because mentally, they're still teenagers trying to process their bizarre new bodies and abilities. Watching them discover what they can and can't do never stops being entertaining, and that joke carries through the entire film without wearing thin. Beyond the humor, the story itself is genuinely engaging. The plot moves at a steady pace. The visual effects are impressive, and the adventure elements feel polished. It's rare to say this, but this sequel easily outdoes the original Jumanji, not because it's some cinematic masterpiece, but because it exceeded expectations by such a wide margin. For me, it's been one of the biggest surprises of the year. While browsing through 2017 releases during a movie poll on ICM, I noticed how much Dwayne Johnson had stood out in recent action franchises and remembered how strong Karen Gillan was in Oculus. With this being one of the final UK releases of the year still playing in theaters, it felt like the right time to finally check it out. From a creative standpoint, the writers take the classic board game idea and cleverly modernize it by turning it into a video game. The script pokes fun at gaming tropes like repetitive NPC dialogue and obvious mission objectives while still embracing them. This self-aware humor helps the film rise above most video game adaptations. Rather than getting bogged down in the heavy mythology, the story keeps things simple, letting the action, character dynamics, and comedy take center stage. Each challenge highlights how every character contributes something useful to the team. Director Jake Kasdan, following in his father's adventurous footsteps, makes excellent use of Hawaii's jungle landscapes to create a claustrophobic, high-stakes game environment. Every level feels dangerous. Every checkpoint hints at another looming threat, and the action scenes are shot clearly enough that you can enjoy each stunt and finishing move. Performance-wise, Dwayne Johnson delivers a strong mix of action hero confidence and sarcastic humor as Spencer's avatar. Kevin Hart and Jack Black bounce off each other brilliantly, while Karen Gillan clearly relishes her role as Ruby Roundhouse, balancing physical combat with sharp, understated one-liners. Together, the cast makes the jungle feel alive and unpredictable. Like many viewers, I wasn't a huge fan of the original film, but this updated take worked far better for me. Shifting the chaos from the real world into a structured game setting made the adventure more enjoyable and coherent. The movie strikes a near-perfect balance between comedy and action, leaning just slightly more toward laughs. The cast does an excellent job capturing the personalities of the teenagers they're meant to represent, which drives much of the humor. The setup is simple but effective. A mysterious game is discovered, transforms overnight into a console game, and years later pulls 4 very different teens into its world. The nerd becomes a fearless explorer, the athlete turns into a reluctant sidekick, and the popular girl and shy outsider find themselves in completely unexpected roles. In the end, while it may not be the best movie of the year, it's a fun, energetic adventure that succeeds by being smarter and more entertaining than anyone expected. What starts out as a typical high school setup quickly turns on its head when 4 very different teens are pulled into a video game version of Jumanji. Inside the game, roles are hilariously reversed. The shy, awkward girl becomes a stunning and highly skilled action heroine, while the confident, popular girl ends up trapped in the body of an overweight, middle-aged professor who specializes in maps. Along with their teammates, they're tasked with returning a mysterious jewel to its rightful place, all while dealing with limited lives, dangerous jungles, hostile creatures, and a villain who stands in their way. The movie leans heavily on its cast, and that's honestly where it succeeds the most. Without the performances, this could have easily been just another forgettable jungle adventure. Dwayne Johnson once again proves why he's the most successful wrestler turned actor, convincingly playing a massive powerhouse who is secretly insecure and terrified. Karen Gillan shines by balancing physical confidence with social awkwardness, making her character both funny and surprisingly charming. Kevin Hart delivers exactly what you'd expect: fast-talking humor and high energy. But the real standout is Jack Black. His portrayal of the self-absorbed popular girl, stuck in a completely different body, is so committed that it genuinely feels like he is that character. The villain, unfortunately, is where the movie stumbles a bit. He never feels particularly threatening and mostly exists to move the plot along. While I enjoyed the film overall, there were moments where it tried to take itself a little too seriously. and the runtime felt slightly longer than necessary. Still, those issues didn't stop it from being a fun experience. I didn't care much for the original Jumanji, but this sequel worked far better for me. I see it less as a reboot and more as a continuation with a modern twist, since the game itself has evolved over time. Even though most of the movie focuses on the in-game avatars, the actors playing the real-world versions of the characters were also solid and believable. At its core, this film blends action and comedy, but it definitely leans more toward comedy. It was a refreshing change of pace, and it turned out to be an enjoyable watch for multiple generations. I saw it with my parents, and they had a great time too. Compared to the original, which I mainly remember for Robin Williams and its darker, slightly unsettling moments, this entry keeps things lighter and focuses more on character interactions than on fear. Some of the modern updates, particularly the jokes tied to social media and body image, didn't always land and occasionally felt forced. The game mechanics themselves don't hold up to much scrutiny either, with a curse and villain that don't have much real impact. That said, the cast's chemistry carries the movie. While it sometimes feels like a missed opportunity for Dwayne Johnson, Karen Gillan's screen presence alone adds a lot of entertainment value. In the end, it's a fun, crowd-pleasing movie that knows exactly what it wants to be. Nothing groundbreaking, but an enjoyable ride nonetheless. And honestly, I couldn't help but laugh at the missed opportunity of someone returning from the game without using their future knowledge. Just imagine how different things would have been if someone had come back and invested early in Bitcoin winking face. There are clearly stakes in play, but because most of the characters are fairly flat and not especially compelling, emotional investment never runs particularly deep. That said, what gives the film a spark is the contrast between who these characters are in real life and who they're forced to become inside the game. That disconnect adds a layer of charm and keeps things from feeling stale. At the end of the day, Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle, delivers exactly what it promises: a breezy, entertaining, and crowd-pleasing adventure. It doesn't strive for grandeur or emotional heaviness, and that self-awareness works in its favor. The film knows its limits, never takes itself too seriously, and leans fully into being a fun, light-hearted ride. Considering my fairly low expectations going in, I was pleasantly surprised. This blockbuster turned out to be far more enjoyable than it had any business being. Late sequels released years after the original often struggled to connect with modern audiences. The original fans may have moved on, while newer viewers lack nostalgia. History hasn't been kind to these follow-ups. Basic instinct to anyone. Against that backdrop, this film's success is impressive, especially since it manages to stand on its own without the presence of Robin Williams, whose performance was a defining part of the original. The premise has been smartly updated for a new generation. Instead of a magical board game, the story now revolves around a video game. An understandable shift considering how few kids today would willingly sit down with dice and a board, though some of us still swear by Monopoly. When 4 high school students land in detention and discover an old gaming console in a dusty school basement, curiosity gets the better of them. Naturally, they decide to play, because nothing bad ever happens when teens kill time that way, right? The opening portion focuses on setting up the teenagers and their personalities, but once the game begins, everything changes. Each student is transformed into an in-game avatar, older, stronger, more confident, and equipped with specific skills. From that point forward, we spend most of the movie with their adult forms. And when one of those forms looks like Dwayne Johnson, that's hardly a downside. What follows is a fairly familiar setup. Heroes dropped into a jungle world ruled by a villainous force, tasked with saving the land and surviving the game. On paper, it's standard action fare, but the film elevates this formula by embracing video game logic and poking fun at it relentlessly. Extra lives, bottomless backpacks, arbitrary strengths and weaknesses. It's all there, and the film has a great time calling attention to these tropes. Still, flashy action and clever gags wouldn't mean much without strong performances. The adult cast deserves a lot of credit, as they're not just playing heroes, they're playing teenagers playing heroes who themselves are exaggerated game characters. That's a tricky balancing act, and it mostly works thanks to the cast's commitment. While Dwayne Johnson is reliably charismatic, the real standout is Jack Black, who takes on the role of a teenage girl trapped in a middle-aged man's body. It sounds ridiculous, and it is, but his performance is pitch perfect and often hilarious, stealing scenes with ease. Surprisingly, the film also allows room for character growth. Beneath the jokes and action, the teens actually go through meaningful changes, emerging as better versions of themselves by the end. It's not deep, but it's sincere and more than you might expect from a movie built around game mechanics. If you're just looking for a turn-your-brain-off action comedy, this movie delivers. But if you're a gamer, there's an extra layer of enjoyment in seeing so many familiar tropes lovingly teased. And finally, a nod to the ending. Instead of opting for the obvious predictable choice, the writers went with something more grounded and realistic. That small decision earned genuine respect and a few bonus points from me. A modern follow-up to the 1995 adventure classic, Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle may not capture the timeless magic of the original, but it delivers exactly what it promises. Fast-paced fun, colorful action, and plenty of laughs. Designed as a family-friendly holiday entertainer, the film succeeds more often than not, making it a solid pick for a relaxed weekend watch. The story centers on 4 high school students who accidentally find themselves pulled into the world of Jumanji, this time reimagined as a video game. Inside the game, they're transformed into wildly different avatars and must complete the mission to escape back to reality. The movie smartly takes its time establishing who these teenagers are before the adventure begins, and that groundwork pays off once the game starts. Watching their real personalities clash with their in-game identities becomes one of the film's biggest strengths. Casting is where the movie truly shines. Dwayne Johnson plays against his usual tough guy image, portraying a powerful avatar who's ironically terrified of almost everything. His charm and comedic timing continue to improve with every film, and here he proves once again that he's more than just muscle. Kevin Hart, often hit or miss for some viewers, is surprisingly effective, delivering sharp one-liners and physical comedy that land far more often than expected. Karen Gillan brings both style and strength to her role, handling action sequences with confidence and adding humor through her character's self-aware moments. Her fight scenes are energetic, and she easily holds her own alongside her co-stars. Nick Jonas makes a likable impression as well, while the teenage actors outside the game give the story its emotional grounding. However, the true standout is Jack Black, playing a teenage girl trapped in an adult male avatar. Black fully commits to the role with impeccable comedic instincts. From his exaggerated body language to his priceless reactions to the character's physical changes, his performance is consistently hilarious. It's a reminder of just how skilled he is when it comes to character-driven comedy, and he earns the loudest laughs throughout the film. From a technical standpoint, the movie keeps things moving at a brisk pace once it gets going. The action is clean and easy to follow. The visuals are bright and appealing for younger audiences, and the video game mechanics, such as multiple lives per character, add a clever layer to the storytelling without overcomplicating things. Importantly, the film wastes no time once the setup is complete, avoiding the common trap of dragging out the transition into the fantasy world. The film isn't without flaws. The villain is fairly generic and lacks depth, serving more as an obstacle than a memorable antagonist. But given the movie's light-hearted, family-oriented goals, this shortcoming is easy to overlook. Ultimately, Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle works because it doesn't try to outdo or replace the original. Instead, it respects what came before while updating the concept for a new generation. With confident direction, lively performances, and a clear understanding of its audience, the film delivers a genuinely enjoyable experience. If you're looking for an entertaining, laugh-filled adventure that doesn't take itself too seriously, this one's worth the trip. Reinventing Jumanji as a video game turns out to be a smart and surprisingly effective move. That single change instantly explains the modern tone, the fast-paced humor, and the game-style rules that drive the story forward. The body-switching mechanic isn't just a gimmick either. It becomes the engine for both comedy and character development. Each teenager enters the game carrying their own flaws, insecurities, or inflated egos. And the avatars they're forced to play push them to face those issues in entertaining and often heartfelt ways. The cast is a major reason the film works as well as it does. Dwayne Johnson, Kevin Hart, Jack Black, and Karen Gillan fully embrace the ridiculousness of the premise, and that commitment elevates every scene. Jack Black stands out in particular, delivering a performance that balances humor with genuine warmth. His portrayal avoids cheap jokes and instead becomes one of the film's emotional centers, which is not something many people would have expected going in. The direction keeps the story moving at a steady, engaging pace. Action scenes are easy to follow and energetic without becoming exhausting, and the comedy is consistently effective without drowning out the narrative. The jungle environment feels colorful and adventurous, giving the film that classic blockbuster atmosphere while still leaning into its comedic identity. What really sets Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle, apart is its sense of balance. It doesn't ridicule the original movie or attempt to replace it, nor does it take itself too seriously. The film understands exactly what it is, a light-hearted, accessible adventure with heart, and that self-awareness is something many modern reboots struggle to achieve. It respects its legacy without being chained to it. In the end, the movie succeeds because it justifies its own existence. It's funny, well cast, cleverly written, and genuinely enjoyable. Instead of fading into the background as another unnecessary remake, it lays the